Hello. Kicking off with this one, I'm going to be producing a few videos now focusing on the key themes of A Christmas Carol. Now I'll be looking at the big crowd pleasers, greed, poverty, the theme of the supernatural. But I do know that the examiner can be a nasty little smear of humanity at times and can throw in a curveball question. Now, regardless of your exam board, theme-based questions tend to be framed like this. Explore the way Dickens presents the theme of throughout the novel. And in this video, we're going to look at the theme of the workplace, the world of work. Which strikes me as the kind of awkward question an examiner could well ping at you. So let's have a route around in stave 1, see if we can't winkle out a reference to the workplace. Well, an easy win is going to be Scrooge's office, where Bob works. Now you can well believe that Bob doesn't whistle on the way to work, as his workplace is an utter joy vacuum. No mirth, no merriment, just a load of joyless graft day after day. And Dickens describes this workplace where Bob sits as a dismal little cell. And let's lock on at that word cell with its connotations of a prison, because what that's emphasising or capturing is the misery of Bob's working life. And let's delve deeper into that dollop of prison imagery, because by juxtaposing or yoking or jamming together the idea of prison and work, what Dickens is conveying here is the idea of Bob being trapped in his poorly paid role. You might have heard of something called the poverty trap. In a sense, Bob Cratchit, the working class, are locked in this inescapable cycle of poverty. No respite, no chance of ascending the social hierarchy. They're born poor, they're going to die poor. Another detail of Scrooge's office, that workplace from stave 1, is the fact that the clerk's fire was so much smaller than Scrooge's. Bob Cratchit, of course, is a clerk. It just means man paid to do menial written work. Now, whenever you get heat imagery in A Christmas Carol, this is your chance to do some intellectual showboating, to mark yourself out to the examiner as an evaluative student. And those are the students that hit the highest marks, because you're, in this case, going to lay on 2 interpretations. So this reference to heat, on a basic level, emphasises the miserable, unpleasant working conditions that Bob is forced to endure. It's not big fun working in the cold. About a year ago, some of my students had to do a mock exam in a bitterly cold exam hall. Frost on the windows, seeing their breath smoke in front of their face, the whole 9 yards. And these were smart kids. In a decade, I hope some of them are running my country. But they couldn't think, they couldn't write, because, of course, their overriding concern was the cold. It's not conducive to thought, those kind of conditions. The second interpretation involves treating heat as a metaphor. The heat is symbolic, or that lack of heat is symbolic. And what it represents is Scrooge's lack of compassion, his lack of human warmth towards Bob, and Bob's poverty-blighted life. As a workplace, then, Scrooge's office is telling us as much about the employer as it is about the nature of working-class employment in the Victorian era. Now, Dickens was a great man for using contrast to make a point. And in sharp contrast to Scrooge, you've got that chunky monkey, that tubby party animal, Fezziwig. I mean, this guy at Christmas turns the workplace into Wonderland. In stave 2, to celebrate the festive period, he clears away all the office stuff and lays on a big party for his staff. And the point Dickens is conveying here, the message that Scrooge is learning here, is that you don't have to wait until payday to inject a bit of joy into the lives of your workers. A bit of human decency, a bit of warmth, plays very well with the wage slaves. One of the things I love about Fezziwig is the way that his nature is conveyed through his name. It's a canny little trick on the part of Charles Dickens, because Fezziwig, yes, the man wears a wig, I think, but Fezzy has a kind of connotation or a reference to festival or party, and perhaps Fezzy sounds a little bit like fizzy, so it conveys his bubbly, vibrant nature as well. And the extract below conveys something about what Fezziwig manages to do to the workplace, that office in stave 2. Dickens writes, "There were more dances, and there were forfeits, and more dances, and there was cake, and there was negus, and there was plenty of beer." And we're going to leap onto that structural technique of repetition here. You've got all those ands, haven't you? And that's capturing 2 things, I think. Again, in the spirit of evaluation, I'll try and give you two interpretations. First of all, it's capturing that sheer energy of the party. It's a bit like when my daughter comes home from school. She says, "Hello, Daddy. Today I played ball with Laura, and then I played skipping with Amelia, and then I did this, and then I did that." And again, it just captures that real joy and energy. Second interpretation, it's just conveying that abundance, the sheer volume of food and drink and activities or diversions. There was this, and there was this, and there was this. These diversions and food, of course, that Fezziwig is laying on for his workers. Perhaps ultimately then, those ands are just capturing the generosity of Fezziwig, a man who's able to transform the workplace into a sphere of genuine joy. In stave 3, Dickens presents us with a realm of work more geared towards physical labour. And perhaps some of these scenes echo those of stave 2 at Fezziwig's party, because we're seeing the workplace turned into a place of genuine joy. You've got a reference in stave 3 to the lighthouse and the men who work there, and the misery of work and the workplace are no impediment, no obstacle to enjoyment at the festive period. And Dickens relates that these men sink a few drinks, have a bit of a sing-song, and enjoy that human interaction with each other. One of the lighthouse men is described as having a face all damaged and scarred with hard weather. Now, first of all, I think this is Dickens having a pop, launching a criticism, a searing indictment against the brutal conditions of manual labour, the conditions that the working class were forced to endure. It's destroying the body, it's chipping away, it's killing you by gradations. But the beauty of this workplace-based scene is the unconquerable human spirit which shines through. Work may have savaged his body, but not his human spirit. At Christmas time, that joy bubbles forth. Now, I know I've mentioned this in another video, but it's so relevant to this workplace-based theme. Dickens describes the light from the lighthouse as playing like a ray of brightness on the awful sea. To me, wow, what a beautiful symbol for the way human joy and warmth can penetrate the gloom, the misery of people's poverty during that festive period. Another place of work that Dickens shows us is the business district in stave 4. We see Scrooge's fellow businessmen working in the city. And it's very interesting the way he describes them walking about their place of work. He says that they walk and they chink the money in their pockets and toyed or played with their great gold seals. And in some ways this reminds me of the work at the lighthouse scene. In the lighthouse, work damaged the body. Here we're seeing work, if you like, damaging the soul, the spirit, because the work in the city has rendered these businessmen, these merchants, utterly obsessed with money and possessions. And it's a great way of telegraphing to the reader the merchant's materialistic values. Now, obviously, being wealthy, having money, can be an attractive feature in someone. You'll see plenty of super wealthy, buck ugly people with no problem getting a date on a Friday night. But greed, well, that is an ugly trait. And Dickens, in this scene in stave 4, presents the merchant's physical ugliness. He refers to their monstrous chin, and some chap's got some appendage or growth in his nose like the gills of a turkey cock. This physical ugliness is symbolic. It's representing the internal ugliness, the greed that consumes their souls. Right, folks, next up you're going to see something of inestimable beauty and value. And I don't mean my signed photograph of Angelina Jolie. What I'm going to do now is show you a model paragraph engaging with a question that would address the theme of the workplace in A Christmas Carol. And what you'll notice in this paragraph is I've not gone into any detail analysing language. With the Edexcel paper, the second question asks you to look at a theme. So all I'm doing is taking ideas, looking at evidence, and making interpretations. I'm not saying this metaphor does this, this simile does that. In general, it's going to be more thematic than linguistic in its focus. Incidentally, I don't have a signed photo of Angelina Jolie. I'm not that tragic. I do hear she's got one of me though. Right then, wrap your eyes around this beauty and then I'll analyse why it's so good. In the city, the workplace of the merchants, Dickens presents these businessmen in a very negative light. They're described as pacing the district as they chinked the money in their pockets and played with their great golden seals. This conveys their obsession with wealth, highlighting their materialistic values very effectively. And very briefly, just to lock in on the features that are making this a good quality response, well, I've got the word workplace in my first line. That, I'm assuming, is in the question. Explore the way Dickens presents the workplace in A Christmas Carol. Again, Dickens and presents are there. And my basic point is that the businessmen are presented in a very bad way, negatively. I've embedded my quotes. They chink the money in their pockets, play with their great gold seals. That's the evidence that's backing up my point. And I've got my interpretation that shows their obsession with wealth, and I've framed it in a very high-level way by saying it's telegraphing or highlighting their materialistic values, which I guess is a fancy, damn, highfalutin way of talking about their greed. If I wanted to go deeper, I might think about what Dickens is trying to suggest with the ugliness of the merchants. Moreover, by foregrounding the merchants' physical ugliness through descriptions of the monstrous chin and the nasal growth like a turkey's gills, Dickens represents their greed, their mercenary values, as unattractive. The city, then, appears to be a workplace that deforms the values of those that work there. So you can see, moreover, launches me into a deeper interpretation, and at the end, I've kind of brought ideas back to the workplace, suggesting that it affects their personalities, their natures, their values. Oh, we made it. Here's the conclusions. I'm done with talking. Have a goggle at these. Sums up everything we've been talking about. So, I've laid on a wide-ranging exploration of the theme of the workplace in A Christmas Carol. It's certainly not been exhaustive. For instance, I could have talked about Martha in Stave 3, that's Bob's daughter. She has a good old kvetch, a good legitimate moan about the back-breaking labour and long hours she endures at the factory. But you've certainly heard enough to be able to go in that exam hall and slap a smile on the examiner's grey face. We are now done for the day, folks. Arrivederci.